Elias Renn had been on Cathari for 14 days, yet each morning still felt like waking inside a malfunctioning furnace. The atmosphere carried a metallic tang that clung to his tongue, and the heat pressed against his skin like something alive. Even the outpost walls seemed to hum under the strain of holding back this hostile planet. He knelt beside the fractured coolant conduit, welding torch in hand. Sparks danced across the alien metal like fireflies caught in gravity's slow grip. The scanner flashed an error symbol again. "Great," Elias muttered. "A system that dies out of spite, just like the last one." A shifting shadow stretched across the deck plating. "You humans vocalize displeasure before attempting solutions," a resonant, crystalline voice said behind him. He didn't need to look. He already knew the pattern of that voice, smooth, layered, with a harmonic undertone that vibrated faintly in the chest. "Commander Talira Vex." Elias lifted his gaze anyway, because no matter how many times he saw her, she always stole a fragment of breath from him. Talira stood nearly 2 meters tall, her silhouette outlined by Cathari 4 deep gold dusk. Her armor, obsidian plates traced with bioluminescent veins, glowed softly like constellations beneath her skin. Her face held the sharp symmetry of a sculpted weapon. High ridges, luminous violet eyes with 4 shifting pupils, and delicate sensory filaments along her jaw that shimmered with every breath. She wasn't just beautiful. She was alien beautiful, too precise, too luminous, too deliberate to be mistaken for anything human. "I'm not complaining," Elias said, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'm narrating completely different things." Talira's sensory filaments curved slightly. Among her people, it meant mild amusement. "A ritualized lament," she interpreted. "Humans bond through shared suffering." "Exactly," Elias grinned. "See, cultural adaptation." "Incomplete adaptation," she corrected. "Your species still depends excessively on comfort," says the woman who's immune to heat stroke. Talira crouched beside him, moving with such fluid precision that the armor segments flowed like liquid shadow. Even her warmth felt different, less like body heat and more like a low, steady radiation, soft but undeniably present. "The conduit is misaligned," she observed. "Did you cause this?" "No, your sandstorms did." "That was a mild storm." "For you," Elias replied. "For humans, that was seal your will levels of catastrophic." Her pupils contracted in a thoughtful ripple, her species' version of blinking. He tried to focus on the work, but she was too close. Her markings glowed brighter as the torch flickered, reflections painting his face. And for a moment, just a moment, he wondered what she thought of him. Did she see a capable engineer? An annoyance, something else? "Your gaze lingers," she said softly. "I'm observing," Elias said quickly, "part of the job." "Your job requires observing my face." "Occasionally." If she'd been human, she might have raised an eyebrow. Instead, her sensory filaments arched with elegant skepticism. Together, they aligned the conduit. She held the heavy segment effortlessly. He sealed the coupling with practiced movements. Steam surged through rebuilt channels. Stabilizer lights flickered from red to amber. "Functional," Talira declared. "For humans," Elias corrected, "that's practically 5 stars." They stepped out of the maintenance bay into the open dusk. Cathari 4 sky stretched in impossible colors, deep violet bleeding into gold, clouds shimmering with magnetic dust. Far above, the rings of a massive gas giant arced across the horizon like a silent cathedral suspended in space. Beautiful, Elias thought, in a harsh, unforgiving kind of way. Exactly how Talira seemed at first glance. She walked beside him, silent but attentive. The rhythm of her steps matched his without effort. For someone who acted indifferent, she was always precisely aware of where he was. "Why did your corporation reassign you so far from your home world?" she asked suddenly. Elias hesitated. The truth lodged in his chest like a shard of metal. "I needed distance," he said quietly. "From what?" He almost told her. From the memory of a scream, from the day he couldn't save his brother, from the silence that followed for years. But he swallowed it. "From everything," he said instead. Talira studied him with those impossible violet eyes. Her markings dimmed to a gentle hue, acknowledgement, almost empathy. She didn't ask again. A warm wind swept across the outpost, carrying flecks of shimmering mineral dust. Patrol drones hummed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a ridge of metallic trees chimed softly in the breeze. For a brief moment, Cathari 4 felt calm. Still, too still. Elias noticed at first, a quiet so absolute the world seemed to hold its breath. The wind died. The drones froze midair. Even the hum of the outpost generators dipped into a low, uneasy whine. Talira. Elias whispered, her filaments snapped erect, glowing with warning. That silence, she breathed, is wrong. The ground trembled, once, then again harder. A distant rumble rolled across the canyon, not seismic, not natural. Talira's pupils widened. Inside now. Elias didn't move fast enough. Boom. A shockwave ripped through the outpost, throwing him to the ground. Sirens blared. Emergency lights bathed the world in violent red. The sky cracked open with streaks of artillery fire. Dark silhouettes surged over the ridge, too many, too coordinated. Talira drew her weapon, markings flaring with battle-bright intensity. Elias Renn, she commanded, voice cutting through the chaos. Behind cover now. But as he scrambled to his feet, heart hammering, a cold, familiar sensation spread through him. The same one he felt the day he failed. The shockwave hit like a giant's fist, sending Elias stumbling into the side of a supply crate. Dust rained from the ceiling. The world rang with alarms and metal groans. For a heartbeat, he couldn't hear anything except the high, keening whistle of his own ears. Then the second explosion came. The outpost lighting flickered wildly, white, red, black, white, each flash freezing the world into disjointed snapshots. Talira spinning toward the hangar doors. A plume of fire erupting from the perimeter. A patrol drone spiraling from the sky like a burning insect. And rushing figures, dark, armored, pouring over the ridge with disciplined precision. Not raiders, not bandits, a strike team. Elias, Talira shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She sprinted toward him with inhuman speed, armor glowing battle red. Get to cover, move. Elias tried, truly he did. His body pushed off the crate, legs shaking, instincts screaming for shelter. But something inside him, something deeper, kept him rooted for a fraction too long. That familiar coldness in his chest spread outward like a frost cracking glass. Not again, not another person dying because he wasn't fast enough. A blast tore through the eastern wall, sending metal shards whistling through the air. One piece sliced the concrete near Elias' shoulder. He ducked instinctively. Talira, look out. She turned, but not fast enough. A plasma bolt struck her side. Her bioluminescent markings flared violently, then flickered. She staggered, exoskeletal armor cracking under the impact. The air filled with the acrid scent of burned alien alloy. Elias didn't remember crossing the distance to her. One moment she was falling, the next his arms were around her, lowering her to the ground. Talira, hey, stay with me. Her pupils trembled, fourfold irises struggling to focus. Elias behind, she rasped. He twisted just in time to see an armored insurgent charging with a shock blade raised. Elias froze, his body didn't. Before the thought fully formed, his arm shot up, grabbing the nearest tool, a heavy hydrospanner. He swung. Hard, metal met bone with a sickening crack. The insurgent collapsed. Elias stared at the tool in his hand, at the fallen attacker. At the blood splattered across the floor. What did I just? No time, more shadows emerged through the smoke. Talira tried to stand, her legs buckled. No, Elias snapped, pressing her back with a trembling hand. Stay down, I've got you. You cannot fight them, she hissed through gritted mandibles. You are soft-bodied, fragile. Yeah, he said, rising to his feet, jaw clenched. We'll see. Another insurgent lunged. Elias dodged clumsily, his body remembering movements from a childhood, spent wrestling an older brother who was faster, meaner, stronger. But his brother was dead now, and Elias refused to let anyone else fall on his watch. A punch landed against his ribs. Light armor softened the blow, but pain radiated outward. He swung the spanner like a club, connecting with the attacker's forearm. The weapon clattered away. He didn't stop. He hit again, and again, until the insurgent stopped moving. Elias, Talira's voice broke, shock, fear, disbelief twisting together. What are you doing? He didn't answer, couldn't. The world had narrowed into a red, pulsing tunnel. His heart thundered in his ears, loud and animal. Every instinct screamed one thing, protect her, protect the pack, do not run. A memory flashed. His brother trapped beneath burning wreckage. Elias pulling, screaming, begging. The air filling with smoke and heat, and the horrible silence that followed. Not again, never again. A third insurgent charged with a rifle leveled. Elias grabbed a fallen panel, lifting it like a shield just as the rifle fired. Plasma splashed across the metal, heating it white-hot. He yanked it aside, sprinted the last 2 steps, and slammed into the attacker with shoulder-first impact. Both hit the ground. Elias rolled to his knees, grabbed the rifle barrel, and wrenched it away before smashing it into the insurgent's helmet. The visor cracked. He didn't wait to see if they were down, he just moved. Toward the next threat, toward the next shadow, toward anything that dared get close to Talira. Elias fall back. Talira tried again, half-crawling, blood-like iridescent fluid dripping from her cracked armor. "You'll be killed." But Elias didn't hear it. Or maybe he did, but the words couldn't reach whatever part of him had taken control. The part humans buried under civilization. The part built for survival, for desperation, for violence when cornered. A fourth insurgent swung a shock baton. Elias ducked under the arc, barely, then jammed the butt of the hydrospanner into the attacker's throat plate. A choking gasp. A fall. Elias staggered back, breathing hard. His arms shook. His chest burned, but he was still standing. The insurgents hesitated, because the soft-bodied engineer wasn't running, wasn't hiding, wasn't dying. He was advancing. Talira stared at him from the ground, stunned, markings flickering erratically. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Humans cannot, should not move like this." But Elias wasn't done. A blast rocked the hangar. 2 more insurgents crashed through falling debris. Elias looked at them. They looked at him. Something in their posture changed. Fear, not of a soldier, not of a warrior, but of something unpredictable, something that wasn't supposed to fight back. Elias charged. He didn't think. Thinking would have slowed him. Instinct guided him, raw, primal, unrefined. He grabbed a fallen metal beam, swung, and the clang echoed through the bay like thunder. One enemy dropped. The other staggered. Elias tackled him to the ground, fists slamming again and again, knuckles splitting open. Pain shot up his arm. He ignored it. Pain was familiar. Pain meant he was still in the fight. Finally, the attacker went limp. Elias rose unsteadily, chest heaving, face smeared with dust and blood. His arms trembled from adrenaline. His knuckles burned. Every muscle quivered from exertion. But he turned back toward Talira anyway. She stared at him as if seeing a new species entirely. "Elias, what are you?" Before he could answer, before he could even breathe properly, the sky tore open again. This time not with artillery, but with the roar of descending gunships. Reinforcements. The insurgents, realizing the tide had turned, retreated in a disorderly scramble. Their formation shattered. Their discipline. Elias surfaced from unconsciousness as if climbing through heavy water. Sound reached him first, soft humming, rhythmic beeping, the faint hiss of sterilized air. Then came the pain. A scattered constellation of aches across his ribs, shoulders, arms, hands. Each one pulsed like a distant star, reminding him he was still alive. Alive, somehow. He pried open his eyes. The ceiling above him wasn't the crude metal panels of the outpost. It curved elegantly, glowing with soft blue lines that pulsed like veins under skin. Medical drones drifted overhead like silent silver birds, scanning him with gentle beams. He wasn't in the outpost medical tent. He was somewhere far more advanced. Movement flickered in his peripheral vision. "Ah," a familiar voice said, "you regain consciousness." Talira. She stood beside his bed. No armor, just a form-fitting silver medical wrap that reflected the soft lights. Without her armor, her bioluminescent patterns were clearer, flowing down her collarbones like starlight, pooling across her shoulders in delicate constellations. A crack in her side plating was sealed with glowing nanofibers, like stitched light. Even wounded, she was beautiful in a way he couldn't parse. Not human beautiful, something more distant, more celestial. "You're alive," Elias croaked. "Correct," she said, inclining her head. "Thanks to you." He blinked. "I don't think that's how it happened." "You stood over me," Talira said, her 4 pupils contracting into a focused diamond. "You fought off multiple armed insurgents with no armor, no training, and no sense." Elias attempted a shrug, then winced. "I specialize in bad decisions." Her sensory filaments curled tightly, a sign of strong emotion, but not anger, something else. "You scared them," she said quietly. "The insurgents. They hesitated when you advanced, because I looked ridiculous swinging a metal beam." "No," Talira whispered. "Because they expected you to die. Humans are statistically fragile, but you did not break, not even when struck. Not even when wounded." He swallowed. "I didn't have a choice." "That is the remarkable part," she said. "Your physiology should have shut down, yet it did not." Before Elias could respond, the door slid open with a soft chime. 3 Velkarin soldiers entered, fully armored, posture rigid. Their mandible plates clicked in complex patterns that Elias' translator struggled to keep up with. The tallest soldier approached the bed. "Human Elias Renn," he said formally. "You will remain still. Medical analysis is ongoing." The translator rendered his tone as cautious. maybe even wary. Elias frowned. I'm not going anywhere. That is reassuring, the soldier replied. The guards assigned to this room have expressed concern you might attempt to charge someone. I what? You attacked 6 insurgents, Talira said, arms folding, with tools and fists. Improvised materials, the soldier corrected. Highly effective. Elias stared at them in disbelief. I was charging. I was trying to protect. Me, Talira finished softly. The soldier stepped back, not out of respect. Out of instinctive space-making. Elias felt a cold weight settle in his chest. They weren't looking at him the way soldiers look at civilians. They were looking at him the way soldiers look at unpredictable explosives. Talira, Elias whispered, why are they acting like I'm dangerous? Because, she said, they cannot understand why you survived. The door chimed again. This time the soldiers straightened instantly, their armor plates shifting into rigid formation. Talira's posture sharpened, sensory filaments spreading in a gesture Elias hadn't seen before, a sign of deference. A figure entered, tall, radiant, four-armed, draped in ceremonial armor that shimmered with gold-blue energy. Her bioluminescent markings glowed brighter than any Velkarin Elias had seen. Queen Lishari, the ruler of the Velkarin Archanate. Talira lowered her head. Mother. Elias froze, mother. The queen's eyes' 6 shimmering facets studied him with clinical intensity. So, she said, voice resonant and calm, this is the human. Elias tried to sit up. Talira pressed him gently back down. Do not strain yourself. Queen Lishari circled his bed slowly, like a scholar examining a strange ancient artifact. I have reviewed the combat footage, she said, 6 times. Elias swallowed. That sounds unnecessary. 3 times, she corrected, to understand what happened. 3 times to determine whether it was real. She clasped her 4 hands behind her back. You were struck in the ribs, she recited. You sustained blunt force trauma to the face. You fought through shock. You lifted an armored insurgent off the ground. You continued advancing while wounded. Why? Elias opened his mouth, closed it, then said the only truth he had. Talira was down. Something flickered across the queen's face, not shock, not confusion, something sharper. Your survival drive, the queen said, redirected itself toward the protection of another. Fascinating. Talira's markings pulsed faintly. She looked away. Queen Lishari continued circling him. We classified humans as a low-threat species, high creativity, high intelligence, low combat viability. She leaned closer. But you fought with an instinct that contradicts every report we have. Elias tried to laugh. It came out as a pained cough. Yeah, humans do that sometimes. Yes, the queen said, that is what concerns me. Talira stepped forward. Mother Elias. The queen raised a hand. Talira fell silent. Your daughter should be dead, Queen Lishari said softly. Yet she lives because a human refused to break. She folded her arms. Our understanding of your species is incomplete, perhaps dangerously so. The room felt colder. Elias felt smaller. But we will correct this oversight, the queen said. We will learn what your species truly is. She stepped back, giving him a long, unreadable look. You are no longer a simple engineer, Elias Renn. She turned toward the exit. You are now a subject of strategic interest. And before Elias could ask what that meant, the queen added one final line, delivered with absolute certainty. Humans, she said, should not be underestimated, not anymore. The doors slid shut behind her. Silence flooded the room. Talira exhaled slowly. Elias, everything just changed. Elias stared at the ceiling, pain radiating across his ribs, mind whirling. Great, he muttered. I just wanted to fix a coolant line. Talira's markings brightened, amused, relieved, and something else, something warmer. Yes, she said softly, and instead you broke the Archanate's understanding of your entire species. She sat beside him. Elias spent the next day drifting in and out of uneasy sleep. Every time he opened his eyes, a medical drone hovered nearby, whirring softly as it scanned his ribs or sprayed regenerative mist across his knuckles. Pain was everywhere, sharp, dull, throbbing, but none of it compared to the weight settling in his chest. The queen had said he was a subject of strategic interest. He had no idea what that meant, and he wasn't sure he wanted to. When the door to the medbay opened again, Elias braced himself for another squad of rigid, staring soldiers. But it was only Talira. She entered quietly, the soft glow of her bioluminescent patterns illuminating the dim room. Her armor was gone. She wore a dark military wrap, elegant in its simplicity. Without the battle plating, she looked different, Not weaker, but more real, less distant. She stood at his bedside without speaking, just looking at him. He tried a smile. Judging by your face, something bad is about to happen. My face is neutral, she said. It's the alien version of a frown. Her sensory filaments twitched. You interpret too much. And you avoid the question. Finally, she exhaled, a soft, trembling breath he'd never heard from her before. The Queen has summoned the Strategic Council. Elias blinked. Sounds serious. It is. She intends to alter your species, classification within the Archanate. He shifted painfully. We're engineers, diplomats, traders. We're not whatever she thinks I am. That is precisely her point, Talira said. Our assumptions were wrong. Before he could answer, the door slid open again, this time revealing two high-ranking officers in ceremonial armor. Their plating shimmered with polished silver, and their helmets bore the crest of the royal fleet. Neither of them stepped fully into the room, neither took their eyes off Elias. Commander Talira, one officer said, mandible plates shifting in formal cadence. The Queen requests your presence. The council session commences in 1 hour. Talira stiffened, understood. The officers turned to Elias. You will be escorted to an auxiliary chamber. Observation only. Do not attempt to approach the council floor. Elias stared. I wasn't planning to. You charged 6 insurgents, the second officer said flatly. We prefer not to make assumptions. Talira's filaments flared with irritation. He is injured. That did not stop him previously, the officer replied. With a curt bow, they stepped out. Elias leaned back into the bed, letting the absurdity of it all wash over him. I swear, he muttered, I fix one coolant line and suddenly I'm a military threat. Talira turned to him, eyes luminous. You do not understand, she said softly. This council will decide how our people treat yours, how they prepare for you, how they defend against you if necessary. The words hit him harder than any insurgent's blow. They think we're dangerous, Elias said. They think you are unpredictable, she corrected, and unpredictability is more dangerous than strength. Silence stretched between them, heavy tense charged. Then Talira surprised him. She stepped closer and rested one of her hands, delicate, cool, glowing faintly, against his forearm. You protected me, she said quietly. No Velkarin would have done what you did, not without armor, not without training, not without orders. Elias swallowed. I didn't think, I just moved. That is why it terrifies them. Her pupils expanded softly, and why I cannot stop thinking about it. Before Elias could form a reply, the medbay lights shifted to white, a signal of incoming escorts. 2 elite soldiers entered, rigid as statues. Human Elias Renn, one announced. You will accompany us. Elias sat up with a groan. Talira instinctively reached to steady him, then pulled her hand back as if unsure whether she had the right. You will be watched, she said. You must not react to their stares. Why, what stares? Talira hesitated. Some of the soldiers have begun calling you a name, she said. It is spreading quickly. What name? Her throat plates tensed. Elias the Unbroken. He stared at her. That sounds like a bad wrestling nickname. To them, Talira said, it is a myth, a warrior who does not fall, a threat that refuses logic. Great, perfect, exactly what he needed. The soldiers escorted him through vast metallic corridors, walls engraved with flowing lines of ancient Velkarin script, lights pulsing with royal blue energy. Everywhere Elias looked, armored guards stood at rigid attention, their mandibles clicking softly as he passed. Not out of respect, out of caution, out of fear. He caught fragments of whispers. That is him, the soft-bodied one. He fought through plasma burns. Is it true he lifted an armored raider? Humans are resilient. Elias swallowed hard. He wanted a quiet frontier job, a clean slate. A place to forget the guilt he carried. Instead, he'd accidentally rewritten his species, military classification. Perfect. Finally, they reached an elevated observation chamber overlooking a vast, circular council hall. Talira stood among a ring of officers inside. At the center, Queen Lashari waited tall, glowing, unstoppable. The room dimmed. A spotlight fell on the Queen. She raised one of her 4 hands. We convene today, she said, her voice echoing across the chamber, because we have misjudged a species. Every soldier turned toward the transparent barrier that separated Elias from the council floor. Hundreds of eyes, all fixed on him. Talira met his gaze across the chamber, her markings brightening, concern, pride, something deeper he couldn't name. Queen Lashari continued. Humans are not what we believed, not weak, not fragile. Not predictable. She gestured toward Elias. They do not run from death. They run toward danger. The hangar bay of the royal flagship was large enough to house 3 assault cruisers, yet at this moment it felt impossibly small. Hundreds of armored Velkarin soldiers stood in perfect formation, their bioluminescent markings pulsing in rhythmic unison. The air vibrated faintly with the hum of ceremonial energy fields. Elias stood at the center of the vast chamber, wearing a uniform he didn't quite understand, still the bright orange of an engineer, but now marked with silver bands of combat clearance. Someone had polished his boots, someone had pressed his collar, someone had decided he should look like a soldier even if he didn't believe he was one. He felt like an imposter. He also felt like everyone in the room could crush him with one arm. Talira stood beside him, tall and radiant, armor restored to a sleek, ceremonial black. The soft glow of her patterns brushed the side of his vision like starlight. Her presence should have made him nervous. Instead, it steadied him. "Breathe," she murmured without turning. "Your heart rate is elevated." "Because I'm surrounded by aliens who think I'm a weapon," Elias whispered back. "Incorrect," she said. "They think you are confusing." "Oh good," he muttered. "That's better." But when Talira's lips curved, barely, subtly, some of the tension eased from Elias' chest. She rarely smiled, and when she did, it felt like he'd earned something precious. The hangar lights dimmed, then refocused into a single brilliant beam illuminating the raised platform ahead. Queen Lashari stepped into the light, 4 arms folded behind her back, her ceremonial armor glowing brighter than all others. The soldiers snapped to attention in a synchronized wave of clicking mandibles and shifting plates. "Warriors of the Archanate," the queen began, voice amplified through the chamber. "Today we correct a mistake." Elias swallowed. Talira's sensory filaments lifted slightly, not in fear but in anticipation. "For generations," the queen continued, "we classified the human species as low threat, weak in body, unremarkable in combat, useful only for technology, diplomacy, and clever machines." She paused, her 6-faceted eyes locked onto Elias. "We were wrong." A murmur rippled through the ranks, soft, electric, uneasy. "This human," the queen said, gesturing with a flourish of one arm, "stood against a coordinated insurgent team. Alone, unarmored, injured, outnumbered 6-1. Elias tried not to shrink under the hundreds of eyes. "He advanced," the queen said, "not because he was trained, not because he was ordered, but because one of our own had fallen." Talira's markings pulsed softly, embarrassed, proud, conflicted. "He endured injuries that would incapacitate most species," the queen continued. "He rose again and again, defying both logic and biology." The murmurs grew louder. "And when the insurgents saw him," she said, "they hesitated." Every soldier stiffened. The queen lifted her chin. "Humans do not retreat as we do. They do not break as we do. Their strength is not in their bodies, but in something far older, far more primal. A force our scholars failed to account for." She extended a hand toward Elias. "Will." Elias exhaled shakily. His chest tightened, not in fear, but in something deeper. Recognition. Truth. Queen Lashari raised her voice. "Today, Elias Renn is formally inducted into the Archanate as a combat engineer with special operations clearance." A shockwave of reactions spread through the soldiers, some awe, some confusion, some clear discomfort. Talira looked at him, not with skepticism, not with clinical interest, but with something that looked dangerously close to pride. The queen turned her gaze to the entire assembly. "And let this be known, humans are not soft-bodied technicians. They are persistence incarnate. They are the refusal to die. They are the reason we will rewrite our combat doctrines." She stepped forward, closer to Elias than any alien of her status ever should. "And the first lesson we learn," she said quietly, "is that the most dangerous weapon in any war is the one that simply refuses to fall." A unified click of mandibles echoed across the hangar, the Velkarin version of applause. Elias felt the vibration through the floor, through his bones, through something old inside him. Talira leaned slightly toward him. "You are shaking." "I'm standing in front of an alien empire," Elias whispered. "While being declared a transcendent weapon, of course I'm shaking." Talira tilted her head, eyes softening. "It is an appropriate reaction." Then unexpectedly she placed one hand lightly on his back, steadying him, grounding him. Warm, solid, present. The contact stole the breath from his lungs. "You did not wish this," she said softly, "yet you stand here anyway." That is what makes you exceptional. His heart hammered. Is that your alien way of saying you're impressed? Elias asked. Talira looked forward again, but her markings glowed a shade brighter. Yes, she said quietly. It appears so. Before Elias could form a response, a voice called from across the ranks. Is it true humans can fight for hours without rest? Another soldier added. Is it true they heal faster under stress? A third chimed in. Do they really consume bitter stimulants daily? Elias blinked. They're talking about coffee. Queen Lashari raised a stern arm and the soldiers fell silent, though Elias could still sense their curiosity and fear, rippling like heat from a furnace. You will all learn, the queen concluded. Humans are not what we believed. Elias Renn will serve as our bridge to understanding them. She turned toward the hangar exit. The ceremony is concluded. The lights dimmed, the soldiers dispersed. Talira remained beside him. She stared at him for a long moment, eyes glowing, jaw plates shifting in an expression he couldn't decipher. Finally, she spoke. Elias. He swallowed, yeah. When you fought to protect me, her voice lowered into something almost fragile. You changed more than our records, you changed me. Her markings shimmered, soft and uncertain. I do not know what this means yet, she admitted, but I know it began the moment you refused to run. Elias held her gaze. And for the ceremony had ended, but the impact of it still echoed in Elias' bones long after the hangar bay emptied. Soldiers parted around him as he walked, not out of deference but instinct. Like stepping away from a fire they didn't understand. Talira walked beside him in steady silence, her steps silent on the polished metal floor. Every so often, her bioluminescent patterns flickered in sync with his breaths, as if unconsciously mirroring him. She didn't speak. For the first time since Elias had met her, she seemed unsure. They entered a quiet transit corridor, soft blue lights guiding their way. The hum of the flagship was steady, a heartbeat beneath their feet. You handled the ceremony well, Talira said finally. I almost passed out, Elias replied. That is still preferable to panicking. Thanks, high praise. Her sensory filaments twitched, her version of a smile. But the moment of levity faded quickly. She stopped walking. Elias slowed, turning to face her. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at her hands, flexing them, studying them as if unsure what they were supposed to do. That day in the hangar, she said softly. When you charged the insurgents, when you stood over me, I have replayed it many times. Talira, do not interrupt. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with something fragile. I am a commander, a strategist. I have seen warriors rise and fall, but I have never watched someone who should have died stand and fight anyway. Elias swallowed hard. The corridor suddenly felt smaller. Talira took one step closer. You moved toward danger as if compelled, not by duty, not by training, by something internal, something. Her pupils widened, her voice lowering to a whisper. Something for me. Elias felt a heat crawl up his neck. Yeah, I guess so. She exhaled sharply, as if she'd been holding her breath. I do not know how to interpret this, she admitted. It affects my calculus, my responses, my thoughts. Talira. My mother saw it, she said abruptly. Queen Lashari, she said emotional entanglement compromises judgment. Elias' chest tightened. She said that. She warned me, Talira murmured. She said humans form bonds quickly, intensely, that I must be careful. And what do you think? Talira lifted her gaze to him. Her eyes were galaxies, 4 shifting pupils glowing softly, reflecting something she was no longer trying to hide. I think, she said carefully, that whatever this is, I do not want to avoid it. Elias couldn't breathe. He took a step toward her. She didn't move away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, an instinctive, vulnerable gesture of trust. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. When the battle came, you did not protect the outpost. Her hand rose and hovered near his chest. You protected me. Elias' heartbeat thundered under her fingertips. I didn't have time to think, he said. Talira's throat plates fluttered, a sign of deep emotion. Good, she whispered, because if you had, I would have lost you. A silence fell between them, heavy, warm, magnetic. Talira hesitated once more, then rested her palm over his heart. Her touch was cool, glowing faintly. Elias let his hand settle over hers. Human and alien, engineer and commander, logic and instinct. 2 lives colliding in ways neither of them understood. But the moment shattered as the corridor lights suddenly shifted to crimson. An alarm blared, sharp, urgent. Talira's markings flared in response. No, she whispered. Not now. What is it? Elias asked, stepping back. She pressed 2 fingers to a panel on her wrist. A holographic display unfurled between them, red icons blinking across star charts. Her eyes widened. "The insurgents who attacked the outpost," she said. "We assumed they were an isolated cell." She zoomed out. Elias' stomach dropped. Half a dozen new signals had appeared on the map, then a dozen more, then dozens. "They were a scouting wave," Talira breathed. "A test. The real offensive is beginning." Elias stepped closer, heart pounding. "Where?" Talira turned to him slowly, eyes filled with dread and something sharper. "Everywhere." Before he could speak, her communicator flashed with priority gold, a direct message from Queen Lashari herself. Talira opened it. The Queen's voice was steady, but there was steel beneath the calm. "Commander Talira Vex, bring the human to the command bridge immediately. We are facing a threat of unknown scale, and I believe." A pause. "I believe Elias Renn may be necessary." The message cut. Elias stared at the dark screen. "Necessary?" he echoed. Talira faced him fully now. "Elias," she said quietly, "your species was misclassified." Her markings brightened. "Now the galaxy will see what humans truly are." She reached out her hand to him, not as a commander giving orders, but as someone asking for a partner. "Come with me." Elias took her hand, and in that moment, with alarms blaring, red lights flashing, and war rising across the stars, one truth finally settled into place inside him. He was no longer just an engineer. He was part of something bigger, something dangerous, something unstoppable, something human. Together they ran toward the bridge, toward the storm, toward